Your husband, the powerful Prince of Kiev, is murdered in the most brutal way possible. The killers don't stop there. They send messengers to you, his widow, and say, "We killed your husband because he was greedy like a wolf. Now marry our prince. Become our queen." What would you do? Cry, run away, beg for mercy? Olga of Kiev did none of that. Instead, she smiled and replied, "Come tomorrow. I will honor you like no guests have ever been honored." What happened next is one of the darkest, most calculated revenge stories in all of human history. She buried the first group alive in a giant pit. She burned the second group alive inside a bathhouse. She slaughtered 5,000 men at a funeral feast. And finally, she destroyed an entire city using nothing but birds on fire. This is the true story of Saint Olga of Kiev, the widow who became a saint, but first became one of the most ruthless avengers the medieval world has ever seen. Stay with me, because this gets darker with every minute. Imagine this. Your husband, the ruler of a powerful kingdom, is brutally murdered by a rebellious tribe. They don't just kill him, they torture him to death in the most humiliating way possible. You're left a widow with a young child, and the killers have the audacity to send messengers proposing marriage to their own prince, as if nothing happened. What would you do? Most people would grieve. Some would seek justice through courts or war. But one woman in the 10th century didn't just seek justice. She unleashed a multi-stage symphony of vengeance so cold, so calculated, and so devastating that it echoes through history like a horror story. Her name was Olga, Princess Olga of Kiev, later known as Saint Olga. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most savage revenge tales in medieval history. The story of how Olga avenged her husband Igor by burying his killers alive, burning others in a bathhouse, poisoning and slaughtering thousands at a funeral feast, and finally destroying an entire city using birds on fire. This is not a fairy tale. This is recorded in the primary chronicle of Kievan Rus. Buckle up. This is going to be intense. Let's set the stage. It's the year 945 AD. Kievan Rus is a young, fierce Viking Slavic state stretching across what is now Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. The rulers are Varangians, Vikings who came down the rivers from the north, mixing with local Slavic tribes. Olga was born around 890 to 925 AD, likely in Pskov. She was of noble, possibly Varangian blood. She married Prince Igor, the son of the legendary Rurik, founder of the Rurikid dynasty that would rule for centuries. Igor was the Grand Prince of Kiev. He expanded the realm through conquest and tribute. Tribute was everything in those days: furs, honey, wax, slaves. The tribes under Kievan rule had to pay up every year or face the consequences. Olga and Igor had a son, Sviatoslav, who was just a toddler or young child when tragedy struck. Olga was no delicate flower. Even before her husband's death, she was known as clever, strong-willed, and capable. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. The Drevlians, a Slavic tribe living in the forests west of Kiev, were tired of paying tribute. They wanted independence. In 945, when Igor came to collect, they rebelled. According to the chronicles, the Drevlians ambushed Igor. Some accounts say they tied him between two bent birch trees and let them spring apart, ripping his body in half. A brutal symbolic execution for a prince who squeezed them too hard. Igor was dead. The Drevlians were emboldened, and now the throne of Kiev belonged to a little boy, with his mother Olga as regent. The killers thought they had won. They had no idea what kind of woman they had just made an enemy. Right after the murder, the Drevlians didn't hide. They sent a delegation of 20 high-ranking men down the Dnieper River to Kiev. Their message to Olga? We have killed your husband because he was like a wolf, greedy and violent. Our Prince Mal is a good ruler, gentle like a deer. Marry him. Join our tribes. Your son can live in peace under our protection. Can you imagine the audacity? They murder the prince, then offer his widow as a prize to their own leader. Olga listened calmly. She didn't scream. She didn't cry in front of them. Instead, she smiled and said something like, "Your words please me. My husband is gone. I cannot bring him back. Tomorrow, I will honor you properly. Return to your boat tonight. In the morning, my people will carry you to my palace in your boat itself, as a sign of respect. No walking, no horses. You will be carried like honored guests." The Drevlians were thrilled. They thought she was submitting. They went back to their boat, boasting about how easy this was going to be. That night, Olga's men dug a deep trench in the courtyard of the palace. The next morning, the Drevlians demanded to be carried in their boat, just as Olga had offered. Her servants lifted the boat, with the men still inside, and carried it straight to the trench. Then, they dropped it in. The envoys screamed as they fell into the pit. Olga leaned over the edge and asked coldly, "Do you find this honor pleasant?" They begged for mercy. She replied, "Now you shall drink your fill of it." Her men buried them alive. The first wave of revenge was complete. But this was only the beginning. News of the buried envoys reached the Drevlians. They were shocked, but they still thought they could negotiate. They sent another group, this time even more important nobles, to Kiev. Olga received them graciously. "You must be tired from your journey," she said. "Rest and bathe in my bathhouse. Then we will talk." The Drevlians entered the bathhouse, relaxed, thinking this was a sign of goodwill. Once they were inside, naked and vulnerable, Olga ordered the doors barred. Then her servants piled wood against the outside and set the entire bathhouse on fire. The screams of burning men echoed across Kiev. Not one escaped. The second delegation was wiped out in flames. Olga was playing a long game. She was testing their arrogance, luring them into traps, and making sure every insult was paid back with interest. But she wasn't done. Not even close. Now came the most deceptive and bloody part yet. Olga sent a message to the Drevlians. "I am coming to hold a funeral feast at my husband's grave. Prepare mead and food in the city where he was killed. I want to mourn him properly before I consider your proposal." The Drevlians, still not fully grasping her fury, or perhaps underestimating a woman, agreed. They gathered in huge numbers for what they thought would be a diplomatic feast and possible wedding. Olga arrived with a small but loyal retinue. She wept at Igor's grave, as any widow would. Then the feast began. The Drevlians drank heavily. Mead flowed like rivers. Olga and her people drank lightly, staying sober. As the night wore on and the Drevlians were stumbling drunk, Olga gave a quiet signal. She stood up and urged her men, "Now, avenge your prince." Her warriors drew swords and axes. What followed was a slaughter. According to the primary chronicle, over 5,000 Drevlians were killed that night. Olga herself walked among the chaos, encouraging her soldiers. The survivors fled back to their strongholds in terror, but the capital city of the Drevlians, Iskorostan, modern Korostan, remained defiant. Olga returned to Kiev to prepare her army. The final act was coming. Olga's forces, now reinforced, marched on the Drevlian lands. They captured many settlements easily, but Iskorostan held out behind its walls. A long siege began. The Drevlians fought desperately. They knew surrender meant death. After weeks or months, supplies ran low inside the city. Olga sent a clever message. "Why do you persist? All your other cities have submitted and now live in peace, paying tribute. I don't want to destroy you completely. Just pay a light tribute, 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each household. That's all. Then the siege ends." Desperate and thinking this was mercy, the Drevlians agreed. They collected the birds and sent them out. That night, Olga's soldiers tied small pieces of burning sulfur-soaked cloth or kindling to the legs of every bird. Then they released them. The birds flew straight home, to their nests in the thatched roofs of Iskorostan. Within minutes, hundreds of small fires ignited across the city. The wooden houses, dry from summer, went up like tinder. The entire city burned. As people fled the flames in panic, Olga's army was waiting. They captured the survivors. Some were killed on the spot. Others were enslaved. The rest were forced into harsh tribute for years. The Drevlian rebellion was crushed. Olga's revenge was complete. An entire tribe had paid the ultimate price for killing one man. After the destruction of Iskorostan, Olga didn't stop ruling. She acted as regent for her son Sviatoslav until he came of age. She strengthened the kingdom, set up better tribute systems, and built fortresses and trading posts. In the 950s, Olga traveled to Constantinople, the glittering capital of the Byzantine Empire. There, she was baptized into Christianity, taking the name Helena. She became the first ruler of Kievan Rus to convert. Her son Sviatoslav remained pagan, but her grandson Vladimir the Great would later make Christianity the official religion of Rus, laying the foundation for what became Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Olga died in 969 AD. Centuries later, she was canonized as a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church, the first saint of Kievan Rus. She is remembered as a protector of widows, converts, and the faith. But her early life was pure pagan fire and ice-cold vengeance. So, was Olga a monster, or a brilliant, fierce queen doing what she had to do in a brutal age? In the 10th century, power wasn't won with kindness. Weakness meant death for you and your entire people. Olga protected her son's throne and her realm through cunning and ruthlessness that would make even Viking sagas jealous. Her story reminds us how far someone will go for justice or revenge. She buried killers alive, burned them in steam baths, massacred thousands at a feast, and turned birds into living firebombs to destroy a city. St. Olga of Kiev, the widow who became a legend. If you enjoyed this dark slice of history, like, subscribe, and comment. What do you think? Was her revenge justified? Next time, we'll explore another forgotten figure from the medieval world. Until then, stay curious, and maybe don't cross any widows with a plan. Thanks for watching.